let's talk about the different inputs. Alright, no matter what kind of game you're making, you're always going to have some type of inputs, right? Whether it's going to be top-down, 3D, just a platformer, either way, you're going to have inputs, right? Left, right, up, down, jump, crouch, right? Whatever it is, you're going to have some type of input, some way of moving the player around. Now, of course, you got the, click to move, and with that you do. You've got pathfinding, or you just move directly to location, depending on the type of game. But we're not talking about clicking and moving around. I'm talking about the actual ways we get input. And the reason I want to talk about this is because depending on your game, you may have different options depending on the feel. You may have a specific type that you have to go for. For example, if you want to create a fighting game and hopefully get it in Evo, there is a very specific requirement that will force you to do your inputs a certain way. Now, the first way that I'm showing you here is simple. It's just if input is action press, the button, and then do the block. Right? In this case, we're changing our velocity when we hit a button. This is the simplest way to go about it. And you'll see if we hit down and up at the same time, up is going to take priority simply because up comes first in this if-else chain. Right? Up is at the very top, so up will always take priority over down. Left will always take priority over right. So if I hit left and right at the same time, boom, we're going to go left. We're never going to go right until I let go of left. Now, this is the very simplest form of doing input, and this is the form that personally I prefer to teach with beginners, simply because it's, in my opinion, the easiest thing to understand. Right? If this button is pressed, do this. Right? If button pressed, do this. Simple. Else, if this button is pressed, do this. Else, if this button is pressed, do this. Right? We don't have to look at math or adding directions. Right? So we don't have to take something like, okay, this, whatever this is going to be, this result will be direction, and then we take that direction, and we multiply it by speed, and then we take that, and then we multiply it by this, and then we normalize this, and now you got move. This starts getting a lot more complicated. For a beginner, this is something that's very simple and something that they could use in the majority of games just fine. Now, what are some of the other ways of doing input here? Well, our next setup here is very similar, you'll notice. But instead of doing like is action pressed, we can do get action strength. And this is what's going to allow us to have different strength numbers. For example, this is the type of input that you would see on, I don't know if they do it anymore, because I haven't really used controller too well, or too much, but I know when I was a kid, there would be some games, like Metal Gear Solid, where maybe you have, you press a button down halfway, and you would interrogate a soldier, but if you press the button down all the way at full strength, you'd kill the soldier. Or with guns, I know there were some games where you would hold it down halfway, and you would aim the weapon, and if you pressed it all the way, you would shoot. This is where this action strength comes in, right? So we can come in and we can say is action strength, or input.get action strength, and we can say greater than 0.5, right? So if it's greater than 0.5, then we're actually going to move, which I can't really demonstrate here with a keyboard because it's a keyboard, so it's all or nothing. But you can get the idea. This is the same type of system that would be used for using your analog stick and moving around, where your movement is going to be based off of the strength, right? So if you have it pushed all the way, you're running or walking at full speed, and then the less that you're pushing it forward, the slower the character is walking. That's where this kind of input is going to come into play. So where you want to have buttons that are partially pressed versus full pressed, or if you want to control like a walking speed. If you're doing third person, maybe you can use this for like a camera speed. Possibly. I haven't looked into doing that, but maybe you could do something like that. So getting the action strength like this is the second way of doing input that we can draw your attention to. Now we're stepping into a third way of doing input. And you can see we've already reduced all of that code down to simply 2 lines. Velocity.y has a value and velocity.x has a value. And all we're doing, this 100 here, is just our speed, right? So it's the same 100 we were using up top here. And we're basically multiplying that by get axis of up, down, or axis of left, right. So this is going to give us a value between -1 and +1. And then we multiply that by 100. And the same thing with left and right. So we're either going to get -1 or up to +1 and multiply that by 100. And we'll take that value, set it to the x, and we'll take this value, set it to the y. And it's as simple as that. We're able to start moving around with just 2 lines. And you can see diagonals work just fine. And if we hold both left and right, we can see we don't move anywhere. Same if we do up and down at the same time. Since we're getting left minus right and up minus down effectively out of this, we're negating itself, right? So -1 and +1 cancel each other out to be 0. 0 times that 100 will give us a 0. And of course, a 0 on the x or y means we're not going to move. So that is yet another way that we can get or perform input. And as you can see, you could argue that this is much cleaner. And depending on the game that you're looking to create, maybe you want to do this on your x or your y axis. Now, almost the last option that I want to show you here is going to be, we're going to create a variable here. It's going to give us a, this will be our input vector. So of course be a vector 2, and this will be input dot get vector, and in here we have our -x, that's going to be left. Then we have +x, so that's going to be right. We have -y, that's going to be up. And then +y, which is going to be down. And by doing this, with doing this input.get vector, we're going to get an x value and we're going to get a y value. So we're basically almost taking both of these statements from this previous version and crunching them down even further down to 1 line. Alright, and then what was it that we do with this in order to get this? Well, we need to set the velocity in order for us to move, right? So all we do is we take our input vector and we multiply that by our speed, which we've been using, we've just been using as 100. So again, we have 2 lines here, one to set the velocity and one for the actual input. And if we take a look at that, you see once again, we can move, and just like prior, left and right lock each other, up and down will lock each other. So with these, between these 2 styles here, this especially specifically on the X here, if you want to create a fighting game to go to Evo, this is what you need, because you need that left and right to be able to cancel each other out. That is a requirement for a fighting game or for your fighting control. So if you get a fight pad, you have to make sure that it has the left and right being split like this, so that they can cancel each other out. It's just one of those requirements. So if you want to make a fighting game that hopefully can maybe get to Evo one day, make sure you put that, make sure you use that for your code so that you cancel them. Alright, and here's yet another variation on this, where we're setting velocity equal to velocity.moveToward. We're going to pass in our input vector, give a maximum speed, put an acceleration, and multiply the acceleration by delta. And with that, you can see once again, we have our lockout for up, down, left, and right. and we can easily move around in all 8 directions. But what you'll notice here is we have that acceleration. So we're going to build up to our speed, and if we let go, we're going to slide and come to a stop. So, depending on what you're doing, this might be the kind of route that you want to go for. So if we're going right, we're holding it all the way, and then I'm going to hold left now. You see we got to slow down, come to a stop, and then we start moving in the other direction. So if you're maybe moving on ice, as I let go, you can see we keep sliding around. Maybe that's the option that you want to go with. And to make this more drastic, I'll go ahead and change some of these numbers here. You see that build up, and zoom, it's gone. If I hold on the other direction, we should see it fly back in right around now. How far do we slide it? Once it slid pretty far, there it goes, and look at it slide on in. So with that, it slid pretty far because we do have a much higher maximum speed set. So that's another type of input that gives us a completely different movement style. Which may be what you want. Maybe you want to change between these styles, right? Maybe you want to do something like these two, or just in general this top one here, right? The one that we talked about before. Maybe you want to use one of those initially, and then maybe when you get inside like an ice cave or an icy area, then maybe you switch over to working with this setup here. Right, so you can come in here and be like, oh, if not icy, we do this. Else, we do this movement, right? And then icy would be something that you can just turn on and off. Alright, so you could do something like that, so then you can switch between some of these different inputs. Now, one that I just want to mention here, because I'm sure someone's going to bring it up, is where they get a direction, and they basically do, they get action strength, right? And they do left minus right, which is a lot of writing. But that's effectively the strength that they're going to get, and they're going to use that to get a direction of whether or not it's left and right, and then they take that and multiply it by speed and all that stuff that they do, which is fine. But at the same time, you could just do this input.getAxis, left and right, multiply the result by speed, and it's the exact same thing without writing out this huge if input.getAction strength left minus input get action strength right. Set that to the direction times speed equals velocity. It's just a whole lot, and I've seen that one written quite a few times. It's just a little strange. Maybe people just don't know, but you could just use something like getAxis and not have to write all of that. Of course, if you want to, that's completely up to you, but there you go. There's how many ways do we look at? Classic is action 1, strength 2, axis 3, input vector on its own 4, and this move towards with acceleration 5. So we looked at 5 different ways that you can do input in Godot, and I'm sure you could probably do most of this, if not all of this, in 3D as well. But there you have it. There's all these different ways that you can do input. Which one you want to do is up to you. Which one is best for your game, again, completely up to you. Maybe there's multiple versions that work. Maybe there's one that outshines the rest. Something like the strength or axis could be great for steering if you're doing a racing game. Again, a fighting game, that's kind of mandatory to have that cancel out. The acceleration here, as I mentioned, may be good if you're doing an icy area, but then maybe use a different system when you're not in an icy area. And I'm just going to start repeating myself at this point, so I'm going to go ahead and end the video here. But there you go. There's, God, I already forgot. Was it 5 different ways of doing input for your characters? Oh, and there are some that we did skip over. Obviously, event check. like, is the key press? Oh, are we pressing the W key? Right. For example, if input dot is right coming in and doing key press or key label press, physical key press, things like that, and we can come in here, P W, right? Boom. Come in and set our values. But I skipped over this just because majority of people aren't going to be using keys like this. They're actually going to be using actions from the input mapper that they set up. And two, it's going to work exactly like we did up top here, right? If button pressed, do this. So it's exactly the same kind of setup. So key pressed, W, okay, so velocity dot Y equals minus 100 because we're going up. Right, and I can easily show you that real quick, right? We just come in, we hit up, and there we go, we're going that way. Right, so this minor ones like that I didn't show you. There's a one for the joy axis, which works just like the get axis here, only it's specifically for controllers. So there are a few more things as far as input is concerned, but those 5 should be able to get you with any game that it is that you want to create. All right, take care. Have yourselves a good one, and I'll see you guys next week.